210 miles per hour. That is how fast the wind rips at the top of the Burj Khalifa on a bad day. It whips across a giant spire of steel and glass piercing half a mile into the sky, sitting above what used to be nothing but sand, just empty dunes stretching out to a blurry, hot horizon. Now, the tallest building we have ever made stands right there, air-conditioned to a crisp 22 degrees inside, while it is 48 outside. It is a monument to a pretty arrogant idea that we can build whatever we want, wherever we want, and the planet just has to deal with it. Except the planet is not dealing with it. The desert Dubai conquered is starting to conquer back, and the ways it is doing that are stranger, slower, and way more dangerous than any sudden collapse you would expect from a city that looks this invincible from a helicopter. Let me take you back a bit. The story of how this happened is wild. A fishing village with dirt roads and pearl divers became a skyline you can spot from space in about 60 years. In 1960, Dubai had roughly 40,000 people. There were no skyscrapers, no real airport, and camels actually outnumbered cars. The economy ran on pearls and small-time trade across the Persian Gulf. When Japan flooded the market with cultured pearls in the 1930s, even that business nearly died. This was not a wealthy place. It was just a tiny settlement clinging to the edge of one of the harshest environments on Earth, the Arabian Desert, where summer ground temperatures can cook an egg and it rains maybe a few days a year. Then came the oil. Dubai found it offshore in 1966, but here is the part most people get wrong. Dubai never had that much oil, not compared to Abu Dhabi next door, which is sitting on an absolute ocean of the stuff. Dubai's reserves were always going to run out fast, and the rulers knew it. So Sheikh Rashid, and later his son Sheikh Mohammed, made a massive bet that defined everything. They decided to spend the oil money right then, fast, before it was gone, to build something that would outlive the oil itself. They wanted to turn the desert into a place the whole world had to pass through. A hub, a global brand. And they did not build carefully. They built like the ground was on fire. Think about what that actually took. You are constructing a mega city in a place with no fresh water, no natural building materials, no real soil, and temperatures hot enough to melt asphalt. Every single thing you see in Dubai had to be forced into existence against nature. Those glass towers trap heat like greenhouse bubbles, which means they need constant, brutal cooling. The lush green golf courses in the middle of a desert require every blade of grass to drink water that had to be manufactured from scratch. For those palm-shaped islands off the coast, workers dredged 94 million cubic meters of sand from the seafloor and piled it into shapes you can see from orbit. That last project, the Palm Jumeirah, is where the desert's counterattack gets interesting, because the sea does not like being told what shape to be. We will get to that. First, you have to understand the water. Water is the crack running through the entire foundation of this place, and almost nobody talks about it. Dubai gets less than 4 inches of rain a year. Compare that to London's 23 inches, or Miami's 4 inches. In a normal year, you can count the rainy days on your fingers. So where does a city of 3.6 million people, plus tens of millions of tourists, get water for drinking, showers, fountains, pools, and that absurd indoor ski slope with real snow? They make it from the sea. It is called desalination. Dubai and the wider UAE run some of the largest desalination operations on Earth, boiling or pressure forcing salt out of Gulf seawater to produce fresh water that pours out of every tap. Roughly 42% of the UAE's water comes from desalination, and in Dubai, they depend on it completely. Without those plants running 24 hours a day, the city would go totally dry in a matter of days. Not weeks. Days. Sit with that for a second. This entire civilization, the malls, the marinas, the millions of residents, is kept alive by machines that never turn off. It is the most artificial life support system any major city has ever depended on. If someone pulls the plug, the whole thing dies of thirst in a place where dying of thirst is the historical default. And here is the twist the brochures leave out. Desalination is slowly poisoning the sea that feeds it. When you pull seawater in and strip out the fresh stuff, the salt does not just disappear, you concentrate it. What flows back out into the Persian Gulf is brine. This water is sometimes twice as salty as what came in. It is warmer, and it is laced with chemicals used to keep the plants running. The Persian Gulf is shallow and semi-enclosed, so it barely flushes itself out to the open ocean. Because of this, the brine builds up. Salinity in parts of the Gulf has climbed measurably over decades. That warmer, saltier water stresses the ecosystem and makes desalination even harder and more expensive as time goes on. It is a snake eating its own tail. The more water Dubai needs, the more it wrecks the source of that water, and the more energy it takes to squeeze the next drop out. That is the desert fighting back through the sea. It is quiet, chemical, and relentless. Now let us talk about the heat, because the heat is an enemy that never sleeps. Dubai in July is not a place humans are meant to be outside. Afternoon highs regularly punch past 45 degrees Celsius, which is about 113 Fahrenheit, and the humidity coming off the Gulf makes it feel like walking into a wet oven. The city responds the only way it can, with air conditioning everywhere. It is in the bus stops, which are enclosed and chilled. It is in the sprawling malls, kept so cold you will want a jacket. It is in every apartment, office, taxi, and hallway. Estimates suggest cooling can eat up more than 70% of a building's electricity load during peak summer. Where does that electricity come from? Burning fossil fuels. That pumps out carbon, which warms the planet, which makes the desert hotter, which forces the act to work harder, which burns more fuel. You can see the loop. Dubai is fighting the heat with the exact thing making the heat worse, and the desert just keeps turning up the thermostat. Scientists have run the models, and they are grim. There are peer-reviewed studies warning that parts of the Persian Gulf region could cross a threshold called wet bulb temperature within this century. That is the point where the combination of heat and humidity is so severe the human body can no longer cool itself down by sweating. If you cross that line for even a few hours, a healthy person sitting in the shade with unlimited water will die. That is not just a bad heat wave. It means a place becomes physically lethal to exist in. And the Persian Gulf coast, where Dubai sits, is flagged as one of the areas most likely to get there first. Let that sink in. The city built as a paradise could become one of the first places on Earth where stepping outside in the wrong month can kill you. Maybe you are thinking they will just stay inside. They have the act, and they have the money. You would be half right, until you remember what happened in April 2024, when the sky did something Dubai was never built to handle. It rained. It really rained. In a single day, parts of the UAE got more than a year and a half's worth of rainfall. Some areas recorded over 250 millimeters in 24 hours, in a country that averages under 100 millimeters annually. The desert, which almost never sees water fall from above, suddenly saw a total deluge. A city engineered to shed heat, not handle drainage, had almost nowhere to put it. The images went everywhere online. The Dubai you know from Instagram, the supercars and 7-star hotels, was completely underwater. Highways turned into brown rivers. Luxury vehicles bobbed, floated, and sank. The gleaming new terminal at Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest on Earth, flooded so badly that planes had to taxi through standing water. Hundreds of flights were canceled or diverted. People were stranded in the terminal for days, sleeping on floors and running out of food and water inside one of the richest transport hubs on the planet. Why did it flood so catastrophically? Because desert cities do not build infrastructure for rain that never comes. The drainage pipes were tiny. The ground, baked rock hard and paved over with concrete, could not absorb the water. There were no wide, natural floodplains left to soak it up, because those had all been built on. So the water just sat there, rising, with nowhere to go. In a metropolis that spent 60 years assuming the sky would never open up like that. There is uncomfortable science underneath it, too. A hotter atmosphere holds more moisture. For every degree of warming, the air carries roughly 7% more water vapor. When storms do form over a warming Gulf, they dump far more rain than they used to. The very warming Dubai's massive energy appetite helps drive is loading the dice for these freak floods. The desert does not just fight back with drought and heat. Sometimes it fights back with the one thing the city forgot to fear, which is water from above. There were even accusations that cloud seeding made things worse. That is the UAE's practice of firing particles into clouds to squeeze out more rain. Officials denied it played a role in that specific storm. And meteorologists mostly agreed the weather system was just an enormous natural event supercharged by warm conditions. But look at the irony inside that debate. A country so desperate for water that it tries to manufacture rain from the sky gets buried by a storm that drowns its airport. The desert has a pretty dark sense of humor. Now let us go back to those islands, the Palm Jumeirah and the World Islands. The sea has its own slow revenge in mind here. When engineers dredged all that sand and shaped it into a palm tree jutting into the Gulf, they created hundreds of beachfront properties for the ultra-wealthy, like villas and hotels. What they also created was a massive amount of brand new coastline that now has to be defended forever against the ocean. The palm is ringed by a huge crescent breakwater specifically to shield it from waves, because artificial sand islands do not just stay put on their own. Currents want to redistribute the sand, and storms want to erode it. The sea is patient, and sand is loose. The bigger, more ambitious project, a cluster of 300 artificial islands shaped like a map of the globe called the World, became a cautionary tale almost as soon as it was built. Reports over the years suggested some of the islands were eroding, sinking, or shifting, with the sand slowly slumping back toward the seafloor it came from. Development stalled, and much of it sat empty for years. The ocean simply started reclaiming the geography Dubai tried to impose on it, grain by grain. Then add sea level rise on top. Dubai's coast is flat and low. Much of its most expensive, iconic development hugs the waterline because everyone wants waterfront property. But global sea levels are climbing, and low-lying coastal cities everywhere face the same tough math. More water, higher tides, and stronger storm surges hit a shoreline that was artificially extended into the sea in the first place. The most valuable real estate in the city is the most exposed. That is not a bug the developers ignored by accident. It is the direct consequence of building a fantasy on the edge of a rising ocean. I want to be fair here, because this is not just a simple story of pride getting punished. Dubai is not stupid about this. Some of the most aggressive climate adaptation experiments on Earth are happening right there out of pure necessity. They know their situation. They have watched their own oil-driven playbook run out of road. Because of that, Dubai and the UAE have poured money into things like the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, one of the largest single-site solar projects on the planet. They are betting that the same brutal sun trying to kill the city can be turned into the power that saves it. There is talk of net zero targets, hydrogen, and cooling districts that chill entire neighborhoods more efficiently than thousands of individual ACC units. They even hosted the COP28 Global Climate Summit in 2023. An oil-rich state chairing the world's biggest climate negotiation tells you everything about the strange corner they have painted themselves into. But here is my honest read on it. Adaptation is a race, and the desert has a massive head start. You can build all the solar panels you want, but if the Gulf keeps getting saltier and hotter, if the wet bulb threshold keeps creeping closer, and if freak floods keep coming harder, you are not actually solving the problem. You are just managing your speed as you fall. The fundamental bet that engineering and money can permanently override one of the most hostile environments on Earth has never been proven over the long run. 60 years is nothing. Cities are supposed to last centuries or millennia. Just look at Rome. Dubai's grand experiment is barely old enough to have grandchildren. The deeper problem is not even any single threat. It is that they all feed into each other. The heat drives the cooling drives the emissions, and the emissions drive the warming. The warming then drives the salinity, the storms, and the sea rise. Meanwhile, the desalination drives the brine, and the brine makes desalination harder. Every single solution creates the next crisis. It is a machine with the accelerator welded down, and Dubai is riding inside it, dressed in gold. Let me give you one more image that really stuck with me. There is a place called Ski Dubai. It is an indoor ski slope with real snow, actual chairlifts, and even penguins, all inside a shopping mall. While it is blast furnace hot outside, people are wearing parkas and sledding down manufactured powder that has to be kept frozen against the will of the surrounding desert every second of every day. It is magnificent, but it is also insane. It is the perfect symbol of the whole project, a place holding back reality by sheer force of energy. The exact second the power fails, the desert floods in and the illusion melts. Now, here is what nobody can tell you for sure. Does the illusion hold? There is a version of this story where Dubai becomes the living proof that humans can engineer their way through absolutely anything. A version where the solar farms, the seawalls, and the sheer wealth outrun every single threat, leaving the city standing for 1,000 years as the place that beat the desert. The rulers there genuinely believe that is the ending, and they have put their whole civilization on that bet. Then there is the other version, the one where the compounding pressures of salt, heat, water, and a rising sea eventually cost more to hold back than the city is actually worth. A version where the fantasy becomes too expensive to maintain. And the sand starts moving back in the way it always has, patient as ever, reclaiming a coastline that was never really solid ground to begin with. The pearl divers who lived here before the oil knew something the skyscrapers seemed to have forgotten. The desert does not get conquered, it gets negotiated with. It lets you stay on its terms for a while, and it keeps its own ledger of exactly what you owe. Dubai borrowed 60 years of an impossible city from a landscape that has been killing off human ambition for 10,000 years. The interest on that loan is coming due in brine, heat, floodwater, and shifting sand. Whether the richest, boldest urban gamble in human history can keep paying it, or whether the desert simply forecloses, is the question hanging over every one of those